Hi, welcome to SBR TV. I'm Peter Loshak. This is the SBR TV Experts Roundtable for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. We've gotten some great advice really all year long from these guys, and it definitely has continued into the playoffs, where last week we got, among other things, great calls on Green Bay and the under in that game. They talked about the under in the Jets-Colts game, which is a great pick. So let's welcome back to the show Scott Kellen from 6centsports.com, Zach Rosenfield from Accuscore.com, and professional handicapper John Ryan. Congrats, guys, and thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start off with the Saturday games. We'll start with the first one, Baltimore at Pittsburgh. This is a bit of a tough one. The Ravens, of course, got a great win last week on the road over KC. We noted last week what a great road team in the playoffs Baltimore's been in recent years, and Zach, you in particular, liked the Ravens last week, so that was a great call, great pick. Now, though, they're about a 3.5-point dog to Pitt, and Pitt, of course, they're off of a week of rest. Joe Flacco played his best playoff game of his life last week, pretty much, but he's sure to get a much tougher test here against Pitt's defense. And Flacco and the Ravens in general, as good as they may have been on the road in the playoffs in recent years, and just on the road in general this year, have not been a good bet against Pitt recently. Flacco's only won twice against Pittsburgh in 7 games in his career, and the Ravens are 1-4-1 against the spread against Pittsburgh in their last 6 games against them. So I personally am not clear as to where an edge might be here. It's hard to swallow a bet against Baltimore, getting 3 and a hook in what will likely be a tough, close game. But it's also tough to swallow going against Pitt in light of their recent ATS record against Baltimore and Pitt's week off. But they do usually play each other pretty close to within a touchdown. So let's start with you, Zach, since you had such a great call on Baltimore last week. What do you think of them getting 3.5 here against Pitt?
I think you make an interesting point there, Peter. 3.5 is a very interesting number, right? Because not only does it represent, the extra half point, but that's an extra possession. And in games like this, an extra possession amounting to points, it really counts for a lot. This isn't a strong lean for us, although we will say that we are profitable with both Baltimore and Pittsburgh this year. Baltimore we're doing great with. We were 8-3 going into against the spread with them going into the wild card round. That moved to 9-3, and we are. I'm going to look at my Pittsburgh Steelers record right now, which is 8-6. So that's a little bit more modest, but Pittsburgh was a bit of a bizarre team in the first half of the year with Ben Roethlisberger being down. Our indications say that Pittsburgh simulates to be a 4-point favorite in this game. And you talk about variables, you talk about the against the spread record that Pittsburgh's had over Baltimore over their last 7 games, 7 wins with Roethlisberger starting for Pittsburgh over Baltimore, home field advantage. All indications say here that you might want to lay the points, although I'm sure maybe the other panelists might be able to make a stronger case for either side. We'd give a narrow margin to Baltimore in this game. To Pittsburgh in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's tough. I'll tell you one thing that's come into my mind. It's a little bit embarrassing because I know it's incredibly square, but it's probably going to. These teams play each other really close. I think the past 6 games have all come within a touchdown or something. So even though you're not crossing a 3, there's something in me that's thinking maybe Baltimore on a teaser. Tease them up to 10.5 or 9.5 or something. Scott Kellen, what do you think about this line?
Yeah, Peter. I think it's a tough matchup to call. These teams do play each other close. Now, ironically, Baltimore, the last 2 times that they've defeated Pittsburgh, it's been without Roethlisberger at quarterback. Last year in Baltimore, they won, and it was Dennis Dixon, and they were kind of lucky to win that game. It was a very close game, obviously. And then earlier this year, they played without Roethlisberger. I think Charlie Batch is the quarterback for Pittsburgh, and Baltimore scored late in that game to win that game. But, Baltimore on the road this year, they played the Jets, they played Pittsburgh, they played New England, they were at Atlanta, and then last week at Kansas City in terms of playing playoff teams on the road. And they fared very well. They won by 1-3, lost by 3 at New England, lost by 5 at Atlanta, but we know Atlanta scored late in that game to get that win, and then obviously blew out KC last week. So they have been competitive, and unlike last week where I think I may have mentioned to some degree where they're not blowing teams away on the road,
right.
They obviously don't need to blow anybody away on the road this week. They're getting the points. And in Pittsburgh at home this year, they defeated Atlanta in week 1, 15-9, lost in week 2 to Baltimore, or week 3, I think, week 3 or 4 that was. And then they got blown up by New England at home, playoff team, and lost to the Jets at home. So they certainly haven't been real competitive at home against other playoff teams. My numbers, though, and everything I look at, they don't really respect Baltimore that much. And they actually favor Pittsburgh by quite a bit in this game and predict about 35 points. And these games have typically been low scoring. So I would look at this maybe as being a low scoring game, possibly look at an under. And just because the value lies with Pittsburgh, I'll take Pittsburgh, but it's a hesitant lean. It's a weak lean just because of how close these teams play.
Right, this is a tough number. Zach, I mentioned a teaser before. What you were about to respond to that? What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think teasers are not a bad play, especially in the NFL, because, the lines are so true and so
Right.
fair. But I just did a revised probability. Baltimore is a 72.5% to cover getting 10.5 points. So that's very good. You might want to consider packaging that if you're looking to buy some insurance, or as the fast money guys might say on TNBC's protection with the New England Jets over/under game, which I'll address too, which is a very strong play.
Right.
But look, only package a teaser if you feel very strong about one side or one total, and you really want to buy some insurance on it.
Yeah, it is a tough line, very sharp line. John Ryan, what light can you shed on this, if any?
I like the idea of taking Baltimore, and I'll tell you why. Flacco is actually tied on the all-time list for most road wins in the playoffs, and I was quite shocked to see that. The number is only 4 on the all-time list for road wins, and I think that's because Brady and those type of guys are always playing at home and rarely have to venture out into the road. But the experience that brings to this game, and I think the line is 3.5, and I think that's telling you something there. Baltimore played last week, and granted they didn't have to play very hard to beat the Chiefs. Pittsburgh is home resting, and 2 weeks of rest, as we know throughout the decades of football, is a huge advantage. So why is the line only 3.5? I do think that Flacco is very good at reading the cover 2 and some of the other variations that Pittsburgh likes to employ. And with that said, the slant pattern against the Steelers, I think, is going to be the play that is really going to work well. That, in turn, is going to set up the play-action pass, and whenever you get those Steeler linebackers to freeze just for a second, it opens up the middle into a bigger area. And as we all know, Flacco is a very accurate passer, and he's very intelligent. He's not going to make mistakes that are going to hurt the team. So for that reason alone, I have a lean here on Baltimore.